Bismillahi wa salatu wa salamu wa rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And today we are in our fourth and the last of our marriage series of the month. And so, alhamdulillah, we've covered many topics, but I feel like we can never do justice with topics like this. When Islam sees a family as a basic unit in a society, there can never be enough of where of what we can learn from. So we will inshallah try to keep this topic about marriage, about family, maintaining ties of kinship, and all these topics uh, to come in the coming talks in the future from MCHK, inshallah. And so, recapping from what we've covered last week, we've covered pretty much quite a broad spectrum of conflicts where would occur between spouses occasionally, say down to finances. We are here to talk about maintaining marriages because, as we all know, that uh, love or there's this idiom in English where the one in love sees no fault, something along those lines, right? But after a few years, you only see faults, right? So now today we are here to talk about how to maintain marriages despite of the flaws that start to appear in front of our eyes with our spouses, right? And so I will start off with one question. Since last week we talked about ibadah as the beginning also, like I would like to ask, since amongst the sahabas it's pretty common for them to have acts of ibadah where they will perform together as a family, as a unit. Like say for example Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he would actually wake up his family for Qiyam al so much so that his family member would thought they will miss the suhoor for the next day, right? And other occasions, say for example, Umar ibn Khattab, anhu, he would actually have his son Ibn Umar to march with him during his time of Khalifa, to march with him along around the city of Medina, to patrol the city, right? And all these acts of ibadah where they dedicate to have their family involved. Now, in this day and age, there is no patrol we can be doing around Hong Kong, right, as a Muslim. But are there any acts of ibadah where you find are very important when it comes to maintaining marriages? And because some scholars went as much as saying that a family that prays together stays together, right? So, would you have any suggestions for us in this regard?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. I think this is a very good question. You say this is a unit of family. You don't call it unit unless you have some activities together. I think one of the things that probably you need to do is definitely prayer. This is the act of worship that even our Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is also did prayer with Khadija radiallahu anha as well, Ali bin Abi Talib and Zaid bin Haritha as well. So it is something that we normally do at home, especially if I'm not doing Isha at the masjid, so we do Isha or Maghrib together. So it's something that we make kemas. One of the things that I always do, at least I often force myself to do, is to make azan. So that instead of calling time to pray, just make azan. And then somehow it does magic. So whatever they do, they will leave the room and start making wudu and stuff like that. So this is one of the things. We used to do quite a lot sitting together and recite Quran. But I think this is getting less because my daughters are getting bigger right now. But at least I'm still doing it. My wife's still doing it regularly with them. So there's something that we normally do. So there's something, but daughters were a bit young. I like to tell stories about companions and Sahaba. So before their breakfast is always Dad, Sahaba story.
Mm.
So, and I try to make them fall in love with the stories.
Mm.
And I think one of the stories about Saba, and they just like kissing story.
Mm.
But I do believe there are other activities that besides only prayers, and but the time that you spend, I think I remember someone telling me this that the best gift to your family is time.
Mm.
So I heard about this, so I did make time. One of the things that I normally do, I used to do when I had to work on Saturday or Sunday, so I bring my kids along. So normally on Saturday, the office is empty, so I play hide and seek for about half an hour, and then start did some working, and after about 2 or 3 hours, and I ask her to do busy, switch on some computer, and after that we play hide and seek again.
Mm.
This is something that we make like a habit. I have we call it like a father-daughter date, father-daughter playmate or something like that. So like yesterday, I said let's have lunch together. So we went out at the airport. Just do me and my daughter. So I have something like that. I regularly. Just probably one thing I remember this. We were. I happened to probably about 3 years ago. I was working as a consultant,
Mm.
and then my company at the time sent me to parts of Europe, and then I get a chance to go to the Eiffel Tower. So me and my daughter at the time was probably about 12 years old. Is one of the things that I want my daughter to be able to say anything, something. So they can talk to me anything. I will not be happy probably. I'll be very upset as a mother. But no one in this world will love you more than I do and more than your mom against. So this is something that I always keep in mind. So I'll try to pray and stuff like that. But something that's wanting the time.
Mm.
So make time.
All praise is due to Allah. We seek His help and we seek His forgiveness. The best of speech is the speech of Allah. The worst of speech is the speech of Shaitan. The best of actions are the actions of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The worst of actions are the actions of Shaitan. We take this opportunity to beseech the mercy of Allah and facilitate us with our intent and our good work here. And we take this opportunity to send upon salutations and salam upon the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. The question posed by the brother towards the end series of marriage is how do you keep marriage intact? Right. Now, according to psychiatrists, they tell us the only reason people get married is procreation. There's nothing more to marriage than to have children.
Mm.
According to psychiatrists, according to science. What Islam does, Islam goes one ladder up. It just goes one step up and it says marriage is not only to procreate, but the whole point of marriage is to please the one who created us in the first place. So any union that is formed because it is required, and this is the one means of acquiring the pleasure of Allah, or to be considered righteous among the righteous on the day of judgment, marriage is one part. So any marriage that was based on the purpose of protecting one from falling into sin, and you do it purely to safeguard your modesty and to live a dignified life in a society and be raised among the righteous. When you have offspring, they will make dua for you after you're gone. Now, any marriage that's based on these principles is bound to be together. Simple. Do you follow? They say, according to science, marriage is nothing more than procreation. But according to Islam, it's not only procreation, which is earthly, but Islam takes us one step ahead and put it more heavily to it. So any relationship that's based on this, inshallah, will survive. Now, how do you keep it going? Am I right? How do you keep it going? Is intimacy right now or it's coming later?
It's coming later,
Okay,
but
fine.
now it's actually more revolve around acts of ibadah.
Acts of
where-
ibadah.
yeah, acts of
Forming your salah together in the one method. Is one method people can follow. There's another method where I personally believe that Quran is by a group of people. Memorization of the Quran is for every single Muslim, male and female, as much as you can memorize in your lifetime. Maybe they are specialists. They are specialists. People who go to institution or madrasa or markaz where they do spend few years to memorize the Quran, and maybe they become imams, or people who become qaris, to teach people. But apart from those who take that profession up, I personally believe, it's my own opinion, it's not something, it's in the deen, is that everyone in the household, husband, wife, father, mother, kids, grandparents, you should make it a habit to memorize the Quran as much as you can. You know why? Because the moment you memorize Quran is something you have to be reading it little audible. Right? Quran is to be read in a way that someone can listen. The whole purpose of Quran is so there is someone who can listen. Can you put the echo down? The echo is too much. You know, the echo is just way too much. No, even he's got an echo.
Yeah, see, better. Is it better?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Right. So when the family is also in the process of memorizing the Quran, right? As Prophet ﷺ said, Quran escapes the memory of a person faster than runaway camel. Why did Rasulullah choose camel? Why can't he choose cattle? Why can't he choose a goat or a sheep? Why camel? You know why? Because by nature, once this camel escapes, it's never going to come back. Other creations of Allah, like cattle or maybe sheep or goat, they find their way back to the shelter or to their master. But camels, it's one way. So Quran likewise, you don't keep memorizing, it's going to escape and never come back. It's never going to come back. So what happens is, when you're with your family, in the house or outside the house, you have to keep on memorizing. See? So every time you're memorizing, you're going to ask your spouse, "Ma'am, listen to my Quran. Memorizing Surah." Now what happens? She listens to you. She corrects you where there's corrections required. Children are watching. So they will play the same game. Sister will play with her brother, sisters. They'll say, "Hey, mom, dad in this age is memorizing. Why can't I?" So I'm going to read to you. You listen to me. You understand? So Quran in some way or form build the family together. You can do this in the house. Even sometimes you're traveling. Suddenly, it pops up in your mind. I'm forgetting this program. Let me give it to a little child. Listen to me. I want this. I want to listen. Read it to me. See, so these are the ways a family can really be intact to really perform the ibadah. Even charity. My mother used to have this habit. She used to tell me, take your piggy bank, save up every small penny that you get, changes you put there. Every Jum'ah, she would tell me, go give zakah. Sorry, go give sadaqah. So this is another. So as far as Islam is, the way Islam portrays, the beautiful thing about Islam, good deed in Islam is not confined to a single dimension. That's the beauty. If you look at the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, you will see so many things Rasulullah ﷺ says ibadah. in Islam. In the house of Islam, ibadat is not confined to just praying 5 times a day. Even a smile is considered charity in Islam. It's sadaqah. Even to remove a harmful object from the pathway of the people is considered sadaqah. You see, so it's not limited to a single dimension. Why? Is because each one of us have a capacity that we are good at something. Some of us are very good with salah. They have half an hour they can pray. They can recite beautiful Quran and then they just have so much khushu in their salah. But if that person is doing it, can I do it? Maybe it's not in me. I'm not the kind of person who can really do that. So maybe Allah gave me something else. Maybe I can fast. Maybe I'm very good with fasting. I can just keep fasting, no problem. So other person maybe Allah blessed him with wealth. So he wants to give sadaqah and zakah, So there's always a competition of good deed, but Islam has not restricted it. So these are the 2 tips I can give you, but there are so much you can develop from this.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. So basically, what you mean is basically every act of ibadah can be done with family because the act of ibadah has no limit to it, right? And many of the aspects you've touched upon in itself would lead to further questions, right? And say, for example, the point you've mentioned about having your children involved, reading Quran, or like Brother Arif mentioned about just involving your family uh, in storytelling, in story sharing, is something that would increase their love for their sahabas on the sahabas, right? But all these actually can be tied to seeking knowledge, right? And how do you keep seeking knowledge, the fire ignited within the family, or at least with your spouse? How do you keep this desire for seeking knowledge alive in the family? Do you have any suggestions?
Seeking of knowledge in Islam is very vital. Rasulullah says it's compulsory upon every Muslim male and female to seek knowledge. And scholars tell us that this knowledge is about religion, not the worldly sense. It's about religion. The knowledge of the faith, the fiqh, the Sharia, these are things which is made compulsory for every Muslim believing male and female. Now, how do you keep your children or your spouse from keep learning? Now, this is a very, it's easy to question, but the answers can be very complicated because this again relates to the hidayah. And hidayah, in my opinion, is a gift that comes only from Allah. Only from Allah. And if you have a spouse or children who are equally eager to learn this religion, then apply it. Wallahi, this is the greatest gift that you can have. So be in sujood, I want you to do the sujood, shukur sujood, going to sujood. So I forgot one of the forgotten sunnah of Prophet. Any good news comes to you, Rasulullah will do sujood. But this sujood, you don't need wudu, you don't need to face the qibla. As soon as you hear something good, do sujood. Just one sujood is enough. It's called sujood shukur, where you show the gratitude to Allah that something good has come about. And now, so what you need to do, okay, assuming that your family is very much keen to learn the religion. So how do you keep this going on? Is that you can have quiz. You can ask your family to prepare, give them a book, maybe Life of the Prophet ﷺ, or Lives of the Prophets. Or you can give them the book on Usul Fiqh. If there are females in the house, they have to know the fiqh of menstruation. Okay, this is something we are really, really lagging. And Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal studied the subject of menstrual cycle, the issues of menstruation for 9 years. Because this issue is related to ibadah. A woman having a period is very much related to ibadah. And Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, may Allah be pleased with him, spent 9 years studying this fiqh. For that purpose, he also married a woman who has surpassed that, just to know more, because this is something very close. You can't ask every female, right? So you can give your children, your female children, your spouse books on the subject. Ask them to read through, and then you can pose a question. Like, okay, what happens? You're praying and suddenly you have your discharge. Then, okay, you stop. Then, okay, now you stop praying and alhamdulillah, suddenly it stops and then you're purified. Then you should pray what? Suppose it stops in Asr, you should take up Asr or Maghrib. This way what happens is you learn, and when you learn to teach, there's another technique of mastering anything is to teach. Whatever you study, teach to somebody. That's what Rasulullah said, "Ballu anni huwa law aya." Even one fact about me, convey. Because by conveying, you are registering that knowledge becomes a part of you now, right? So when I learn something, I'm coming and explaining to you now. This becomes a part of my knowledge until I go to my graves. That's how it is. So once your family is ready to learn, then you should give them simple books, and then from there you have to bring it to more advanced level. This is one way, or you can enroll them into a lot of online platforms today. Islamic knowledge is at the tip of your finger. Enroll it, pay, and then you learn. Wallahi, one thing, when I learned an online course with Medina University, of course, there are a lot of teachers over there teaching you various subjects on hadith, history, Arabic, the science of hadith. You only realize when you learn from an institute that you actually know nothing. You thought you knew something because you read books here and books there. But when you really enroll yourself into an institution where you have qualified teachers actually teaching you, then you realize, man, for example, I'll give you a simple example. When you pray Salah, if part of your hawla is being seen, in what do? Your Salah breaks? Then how long can it be seen? You see, there's a question of, so scholars put it this way, if any of your private part is being exposed because your garments are not to the level of covering the private part, if it's a prolonged period, then you have to make up your Salah. If it is not, no problem. This is one thing you never learn from any books. You can flip it here and there, you'll never. And another issue, blind dogs. In the side, guide dogs. Dogs that guide people who are blind. If you ask any randomly a Muslim, he or she will say, no, we overreact. They don't become najis because they lick you. It's just the utensils that you eat from must be pure. Otherwise, they lick you randomly, it's not an issue. But we overreact. Now, when I logically look at it from the little knowledge that you may have, you may say, no, of course, brother, it's haram because they see angels, they chase away the angels. No, the scholars tell us that if there is a necessity where the blind person lives on his or her own, where the dog is the only means they can move around safely, then it's 100% permissible in Islam. And the argument that scholars put forth is the same hadith where Rasulullah said, you can keep dogs in the open field or to protect your livestock. Same principle applies. You see? So many things like this you will never know unless you really sit and learn. So one way is, it's good for us to enroll our children and our spouses into summer courses which is available online. And then from there you can ask them questions. Or what did you learn today? Please explain to me. And also there's so many means and ways. This is how you really keep the spirit of knowledge going. And Islam is not a religion that is based on what my father did. That's out of the question. Islam is based on ilm, knowledge. You see? Because if that was the case, Ibrahim alayhi salam would have had no issue with his father. Right? He said, Father, I know something you don't know. Right? He argued with his father. And he told his father, Father, what you're doing is wrong. He said, how do he said, you teach me, it is ego of the parents, He said, Allah has given me something, He's not given you something. I'm telling you, this is not right. And then the father says what? If you don't stop this, I will stone you to death. No father will say this, except if it is Tawheed and Shirk. When truth and falsehood is put on the plate, that's when Shaitan will tell the father or mother, I will stone you to death if you don't stop.
mentions about how to maintain the knowledge, not knowledge, how to keep
The, the
the
desire,
spirit,
the
the
spirit.
desire. I think first of all you have to start with yourself.
Mm.
So you start with yourself that you actually like learning. I have always have books, for example, and I like if my daughters probably wake up at night and see me reading books in front of my computers and summarizing stories and stuff like that. Because I want to give like a show, right? So to instill and then give something. One of the things that I also do, I like to do when they were still young. For example, we took NPR, and then in the NPR, I just whispered to my daughter, "Look at this. Everyone in this carriage right now. They are some of them busy, some of them sleeping, some of them. If you are a robber, who do you think you will rob first, right?" And I said, okay, this is why. Because that person looks a bit lazy, just focus on this. So try to focus. And then after 3 or 4 sessions away, I asked, you remember the lady in front of me? Did she wear green or blue? So this is something to make to make my family like a search and to instill the love of knowledge. So there's a lot of things that one of the things is also like quiz. I like at home from time to time we just go and log into I know you know what's this the Kahoot. Everyone knows Kahoot, right? So from time to time we just pick to go to Kahoot and just American history and then just ourselves and stuff like that. We sometimes play like any games like chess and stuff like that. So this is something that we always. The idea is to encourage discussions, encourage talking, put a summary. So every time we finish going back to Indonesia for 1 week, 2 weeks, and ask them, okay, can you put a summary of what is the best activities that we do? So there's something. The idea is to instill knowledge, to instill the love of knowledge and seeking knowledge. And Alhamdulillah, both of my daughters they like and they're probably the tops of the class right now. They always like learning. And then in my coffee table, there's a hadith, for example, there's a book about Quran. Just while talking, just grab one. You know the story about Al Quraish? Yeah, yeah. We always make a quiz. Always. Kids like to be challenged. If you know how to put it into a nice atmosphere and gifts and so on.
MashaAllah. Okay, now after ibadah, knowledge, and down to the crux of the issue today. So since today we're talking about maintaining marriages, and maintaining marriages involve keeping the love and the intimacy ignited, right? So a topic where I might not be familiar at all, right? But would you both like to shed some light on how to keep this fire between spouses ignited? Yeah. I think so. Everyone is above 18 here.
This is the key to marriage. You fail in this, your marriage is bound to fail. Male or female, righteous or unrighteous, doesn't matter. And I will try to put this in the most decent fashion as I can, because I don't want to use any terms that could be explicitly 18 plus. I try to use it in a way that you get the message across, and then either the terms and the vocabularies I use will be more on a decent side than of more of a therapist side, right? Now, coming to romantic relationship or intimacy or a sexual union between husband and wife, between husband and wife, nothing outside that, because Islam completely forbids any relationship of union outside wedlock. Now, if you look at culture and you look at all the religions of the world, sexuality is considered taboo. It's considered curse. Some religions consider this curse. No, 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 no. You want to be righteous, you want to be God conscious, don't go to sport. It's like telling you, feel hungry, go. Hungry, don't eat. Remain hungry. Islam is the only religion, I can say this, since I'm a student of forces that will only misguide you further and further. And it will develop into sexual dysfunctions as you grow older, and eventually your marriage will be ruined because you're living in a fantasy world. You're not living in anything that is, practical in reality. Now, how Islam makes it open. If you look at the traditions of the Prophet ﷺ, and if you look at how he was with young companions, the people of Sufa. In Medina, Rasulullah ﷺ had a circle called the student of Sufa, the circle of Sufa. This is a learning circle. Young people like you have today, they would come from faraway land to learn in the masjid of the Prophet. Come there, stay there, look at the Prophet, learn from his manners, learn from his behavior, and they will learn and they'll master hadith and ayahs of the Quran. Now, after some time goes by, Rasulullah will go and approach these young people. He will ask them, "Are you married?" Some of them will say, "No, we are not married." But for those who say, "Yes, we are married," he would say, "Don't you think it's time for you to go back to your families?" You see how concerned he is? You have to look at the perspective of Rasulullah from this perspective, because even today, in such an advanced world where sexuality is being exploited, actually, right? Even in this age and time, how many people will come and ask you, "Young man, how old are you? Are you married yet?" How many people in the masjid ask me that? Again, this is the long forgotten sunnah of the Prophet. As a believer, you should be connected to young people as well as to the old people. What hurts a young boy should also hurt me, because he's the future of this ummah. I can't turn a blind eye and say, "It's okay, this is the problem." This is the problem of the ummah. Now, he would ask them, "You've been here for some time, don't you think you have to go back to your families?" And he would send them. He would send those people. He said, "No, enough of learning, leave. Whatever you have learned, teach. Go back to your families." So he was putting importance to an intimacy of a couple, right? And then for those who are not married, he would advise them, for those who can afford marry, because it's a cooling of passion for you. It controls your desire if you fast. Sorry, if you can afford marriage, get married. But for those who cannot, he said fast, for it will lower your gaze. It will calm your sexuality. It will just calm it, and scientifically it is proven. Sexual drive. Okay, this is something that is created in the human hormones. You don't have control over it. You can avoid certain food, but it is not the ultimate solution. Fasting is not the ultimate solution, but it's a temporary relief. But marriage is the ultimate solution. So you have this. And then we have another hadith where Rasulullah was returning from. And then he went up to one of the He's, with him. You look at the character of Rasulullah. He was everywhere. Right? So he was with them, asking him, look at the words he chose. Are you married or virgin? The man says, the Sahaba says, no. I'm married to a woman who's older to me, and she was a widow. And Rasulullah would ask him, why do you want to marry someone senior when you can play with someone of your age where you can exchange the saliva? Oh, these are the words. Why don't you get married to her? So you can play with her, she can play with you. Then for you to get married to an older person. And Jabir ibn Abdullah, Allah be pleased with him, say, Ya Rasulullah, I'm the eldest child. I have 3 sisters below me. And my father died in Badr. So after my father passed away, I need someone to take care of my sisters. So if I marry a woman who's young like me or younger to me, she won't be able to cater for the family because she's young. So I chose to marry a woman who's older to me, so she will act like a mother for my sisters. So this is the other side of the story. The first part of the story is He's explaining to this young man wanting to get married to a young woman. This is the other thing. And there's another hadith where Rasulullah said that, of course, this is what he said: when you approach your spouse, do not approach your spouse like animals do. He said like animals do. And the tafsir given by the scholars for this hadith is that before you enter into any intimate relationship, there should be sufficient foreplay. It is not farad. Scholars don't say it's farad, but it's a recommended act. Right? Now, and so on and so forth, there are many hadiths in the subject. Now, based on this hadith, we understand Islam approaches life as it is.
There is another hadith that Rasulullah says that you can play as you like.
Yeah. This also I'll come to that. Also, Umar radiallahu anhu had a similar statement in his Khilafah. Now, this is how Islam approaches intimacy. Intimacy is something that is what is important in Islam. Now, when I learned from my sheikh, my teacher, once he asked me, what are the sunnah of Jummah? He asked me, what are the sunnah of Jummah? You all know, right? Sunnah of Jummah is what? Ghusl. Perfume for men. Clean clothes. Right? What else? And then my sheikh looked at me and smiled. What is that? He said, making sure even your wife also performs ghusl. What does that mean? He said Rasulullah would enter into a relationship with his wife on the day of Jummah, that night. That we know. Either it is after Tahajjud or before, we don't know, but he would do that. I said, I never seen this hadith. It is there, but people don't mention it. You see, it's there. Rasulullah his act is being narrated openly. Why should a sheikh feel shy to say it? Now, why? So I asked my sheikh, why do people don't talk about it? He said, I don't know, but it's there. Now, how does it help? How does it help you, your intimacy in your spirituality? Now, a person who has relieved his lust through lawful means, that means his focus on ibadah goes up. You know that. A person who's having an issue because he can't relieve himself of this desire cannot focus on his ibadah. It will disturb him. It keep on disturbing. So if you want the highest level of ibadah, one of the way to achieve it is to enter upon a relationship with your spouse and to relieve yourself of that portion of the desire. Then your spirituality goes up. How do we know that? When Rasulullah said, even to be in union with your wife is an ibadah. Sahaba said, Ya Rasulullah, we enter upon our wives for our own pleasure. How can that be classified as ibadah, as sadaqah? Rasulullah said, if you do the same act legally, are you punishable? He said, yes. So when you do it lawfully, you're rewarded for it. So any time, even if you look at Rasulullah, we are told in the hadith that he will enter upon 9 of his wives. At one night. Of course, scholars say because he had a certain gift from Allah. He's had a strength. This is a miracle of Rasulullah. You and I cannot do that. But he did it. So all these traditions that have been, given to us is telling us one thing. Marriage, having a union in marriage on a regularly having an intimate relationship with your spouse, in other words, sexual relationship with your spouse, is very, very important. So important that Umar radiallahu anhu, during his Khilafah, he said you should be with your wife in intimacy every 4 days. They should make a rule. He said every 4 days, which means there should be certain sexual activities taking place between husband and wife. And then he said, also, it's also the right of women to demand the pleasure of this. Because the Quran says women inherit the same rights that men have over them. Because of this reason, because of this ayah, if you look at Ibn Kathir Tafsir, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu will always dress up very neat at night before his wife. He'll always look pleasant before his wife. Why he said? Because Allah says so. If I want my wife to look neat, nice, have good order on her, then the same applies to me. You see? So in relationship, in marriage, Rasulullah also have a very strong hadith about women who refuse their husbands. Rasulullah said, if any of you we don't even know. The Khurul Een that inshallah if we are gifted, Allah gift, they will be arguing and saying, he is there only on a temporary basis with me. He is mine. So look after him. You see? That's why I told you in the previous series, the previous episode, that the only duty of a wife in Islamic Sharia is to make sure when the husband is in need of a sexual satisfaction, she's there to provide. She's not there to wash your clothes, wash your underwear, clean the house or cook for you. This is what she does out of her own willingness. Not it is upon her in Islam. But what is upon her is to make sure when the husband has an urge, she's there. And also one more important thing before I conclude, I want to say why this hadith is like that. Because when I was young, when I came across this hadith, I was thinking to myself, as if I'm a scholar of hadith, this cannot be sahih. How can it be very obvious? But when I grew a little older, I realized that scientifically speaking, the physical makeup of a woman is different from a man. How the things that can trigger sexual feeling for a male is just something to see. You just have to see something that is a little provocative, your need for relationship is high. That's why Islam says lower the gaze. Right? But for a woman, looking at anything that may be sexually attractive may not really be provoking to her. It may not trigger the passion, but touching her, stimulating her, kissing her does. See? So when a man goes out,
Is it scientifically proved?
that is scientific. Psychiatrists tell us this too.
Really?
Yes. So what happens when the man goes out, he sees something inappropriate and he wants to get this out of his head, he comes to the wife, and if she refuses him, the next time he will not come home. He knows where he can get his pleasure. So Islam makes sure all doors of zina before or after marriage is all shut. I'll leave another story later, inshallah. I'll tell you, I met a man who is really impressive. I'll leave it later.
I think I know the man you're about to share with us, but oh well, we'll let Brother Arif to add on to the topic.
The topic is how to maintain intimacy, but I think this is very important what Brother Aslam mentioned. It is before we can maintain the intimacy, there is the importance of understanding how Islam actually understands and acknowledges the need of intimacy. Right? The same thing with Allah put the desire for us to eat, and Allah gives the halal food and choice of for us to go with the halal food or haram food. Right? The same things Allah put the desire for us to have intimacy or sexual relationship, and if we fulfill it in the right way, it is something that is actually pleasing Allah. Right? Is it sadaqah? And again, this is quite common. I think I don't probably want to give like a common, but at least in Indonesia, it's not commonly known. When someone is getting older, probably 40 plus, 50 plus, the intimacy is no longer there. Husband and wife, the husband probably walk 3 meters 3 meters in front of the wives. There's no intimacy. They start calling the wives mother because then the children will call mother, and then start calling the wives grandma because they start having grandma, becoming a grandma. This is again, um, it is not part of, and people always associate that, oh, this is Islam. There's no intimacy, but it's actually a complete opposite. One of the things that I just want to probably focus on how to maintain the intimacy. I think one of the things you already mentioned is about touching, right? Doing the laundry. I don't know whether you understand that.
No, no.
I give you. I used to have a friend back in Indonesia, and then she's about my age, so we went to the same school together as a friend of my wife. So, and then we came to visit her, and then told stories about because they've been married for 25 years and so on, how to get the fire desire again. And in Indonesia, my wife will call me, my nickname is Didi, so my wife will call me Mas Didi. Mas means big brother, but it also is calling, like showing respect to husband. By calling me Mas, that means my wife calling respect. It was because we know each other for too long. So when we got married, for my wife to call me from Didi to become Mas Didi, it took her 2 years and 3 years.
Oh, subhanallah.
It is actually quite. I remember that that's probably just. So I remember my see my husband is no longer there, and I remember, how do you address your husband? By names. Okay, from today, call him Mas something. Right? Just that, yeah, just do that.
Like they say in Malaysia, bang, right?
But yeah, yes, like bang, right? It's just like a soul respect, and it is actually have a big impact. So for women, and again, it's probably long stories, but probably for the woman to continue soul respect is one of the things that brings intimacy for her husband. But the other way for husband is always love, right? It's always caring. Like it was the beauty. Of course, I think one of the only lies that allowed is to praise you what you're the most beautiful woman in the world, right? So something like that. For example, if I tell my wife, if I count the blessing of Allah, I count you twice. Right?
Mark it down, brothers. Mark it down. I haven't wrote
This
it.
is something. This is really something to wording. Sometimes I buy certain clothing. Right? So there's something. Oh, it's in the kitchen. It's a hug and kiss. It's something that always, and it's actually desires after that is actually getting higher and higher. And I remember, I think probably there's one hadith. Rasulullah came to his wife Zainab, and he mentioned, if whoever of you can see something outside and feel the desire, approach your wife. Wife also has the same thing. So even our Rasulullah also taught us that man's always desires outside. If you don't have ability and willingness to actually nurture your intimacy, and this is where the door of zina will come. And again, there's a few tips and tricks that I can think of right now. One of them is praising. One of them, from time to time, I just go to the kitchen and cook sometimes. And I says, I don't know. I also ask my friends as well, why don't you once in a while cook for your wife or do the laundry for your wife? It makes a difference. It brings the intimacy. It's a showing of caring.
You've touched upon two taboos in the community: complimenting wives and entering the kitchen.
There is, I think one of them is compliment, the other one is gift. So if you, for example, it's just surprises. For me, sometimes I buy some chocolate, put it under the pillow. So
Subhanallah.
say, oh, you bought me chocolate.
I better write it down.
There's always surprises every 3 days, every 4 days, or once a week. And again, this part of the sunnah as well.
Mm.
Also, always gives to the mother of the as
Mm.
well. Right? So, and never argues. That probably another long story of topics to discuss.
Mm.
And some of the few tips to maintain.
Now you mentioned about complimenting wives, right? And usually this is the part where, especially in the community, in the Chinese community itself, it's a really big taboo, where words of affection, like "I love you," is something that is very hard for men to express. Or I'm not sure for the South Asian community, which I believe so, because actually many of the Asian countries share this same uh, masculinity to express
Yeah.
words of affection.
Probably not. Sorry, I just cut it off.
Yeah,
There
please,
because
please.
really, probably not so much of complimenting.
Mm.
It is like a sincere appreciation.
Oh, appreciation.
Right? If someone
Mm.
gives you something, right, you show sincere appreciation. That's part of fitra. Wherever
Mm.
you go, whatever society, whatever the nation, if someone give them something, they will be pleased. They will be so happiness and smile. If you just so this is part of our shukr.
Mm.
Right? People who don't know to give shukr to Allah, to shukr to
Shukr
people,
people.
don't know how to give shukr to Allah.
Mm.
It's a sincere appreciation. My wife spent the whole day probably cooking, probably looking after the house. Why not just sincere appreciation? Thank you so much, Sira. Even a simple chili on my plate, I said thank you very much, Sira. I love you so much. Just a simple that makes a difference. That makes a difference. And again, this is not something probably you don't need to go out of your way to do that. It's just sincere appreciation.
Do you have any things to add on? Like, how do you find that? How do you overcome that barrier to speak out words of affection to your spouse? It could be compliments. It could be expressing feelings.
You see, in Islam, there's nothing for us to feel shy or shun from when it comes to your relationship with your spouse. Whether it is internal or external. And one of the things that women always look forward to is appreciation. And this is the exact advice Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal gave to his son. He pointed out 10 characteristics of marriage that will be successful. And I would like to read that 10 points that Imam Ahmad rahimahullah actually told his son. If you're interested, I can go and read it. And then there you have a life lesson. And women in general, remember there's a hadith where Rasulullah said, women are created from
Ribs
that's curved. So scholars in Islam tell us that's why the eyelashes are curved. That's what adds beauty to them. What makes women look beautiful is the curves that Allah created them in, the body shape, the eyes. Right? You have to feel attracted to something. So women by nature don't like men who are rude, always tough, have no words of appreciation. Because this was not even the character of the best human that walked this earth. That is our Rasul. He was a very soft-natured man. He was very particular about his bodily order. And he used to frown upon people who did not smell good. Nobody knows that there's a hadith in the Seerah where Rasulullah used to feel very annoyed with people who come with bad bodily order. And he himself was very cautious about his own hygiene, that he always used miswak. Before entering the house, he would use it. Before standing in Salah, one of the sunnah of Salah is what? Between the Iqamah and Takbir, Rasulullah would brush his teeth. You know why? Because now he's going to talk to Allah. So he wants to smell good. Tahajjud, he will do the same. When Fajr comes, the hadith tells us, Rasulullah if Jibreel alayhi comes during Fajr, Jibreel alayhi will not talk to Rasulullah unless he has used miswak to clean his mouth. Right? So it's important for us as men, the problem with us is that we have this pride. She's my woman, why should I give her any appreciation? Wallahi, a small word of thanks, small word of, mashallah, your cooking is getting better, can take you miles. Can take you miles, can take your relationship miles. You know, there's a word in English that I was taught by one of my relatives. I think I was 18 that time. He came to me and he said, "You want to make your woman love you?" I said, "Well, I'm still 18, so I don't know." I said, "Okay, I'll tell you a secret." He said, "You know, there is a proverb in English, they say, whisper in my ears, I will follow you for years." So a woman says, whisper in my ears, and I will follow you for years. This is what women look for. Wallahi, there's nothing wrong in telling your spouse, the food is good, mashallah, the house looks neat. Rasulullah said, you know, there are three people who will not be accountable for lying, right? Lying in Islam is considered a sin. Whether you lie in business or whatever, lie is a lie. That's it. Simple. There's no white lies and blue lies and black lies in Islam. Lie is no better than theft. It's all the same. But Rasulullah said there are three people who are exempted, even if they lie. One of them is the one who tells his wife and glorifies her, though it is not true. Allah will not record as a lie. You can tell your wife, mashallah, you look so beautiful, even the Miss World is maybe third to you. Right? Doesn't matter.
Write it down, brothers. Write it
Yeah,
down.
you can tell your wife, mashallah, you know, compared to last year, you look a little slimmer. Well, I look like I'm, you know, like I saw you the first night. You look the same now. Maybe she's not. And you know the bottom of your heart, she's not. You're lying to her, yes. But to lie in order to bring about good in this relationship is considered halal. So we need to understand, this is what I said in the first episode of this series. The problem in marriages is that we want to see a mirror reflection of our spouse. I want my spouse to look like me, behave like me, think like me. It will never happen even with your own children. We are all separate entities. First acknowledge that. Right? Acknowledge that she's a separate entity. She has her own likes, dislikes, priorities, emotions. Some of your spouses you might have seen, if you even say one negative thing about her family, oh man, you're like in a lion cage now. So avoid it. Right? Everyone is sensitive to something, so don't poke it. Don't poke it. And I always told you, for those brothers who have children, anytime your wife does annoy you, genuinely annoy you, remember she gave you children. Once you remember that you come home and these are the comfort of your eyes, and she's the one who bore it, right? Come on, both of you enjoyed that moment, right? But who goes through pain? Men and women get into union, both of you enjoy those pleasure, but who goes into pain for 9 whole months? Cannot eat, cannot sleep. She goes through it. And labor pain, life after death for her. Right? And now you're just simply saying, oh, you're a nuisance for me. And also look at all the good things she has done for you, inshallah. The small thing that may pop up here and there is nothing. Right? So it's important, brother. So keep on letting your spouse know how much you love her. Of course, all of us love our spouse, no doubt about it. But you need to express it. Right? You need to express it. It's one of the sunnah of the Prophet. So follow him. He's the best of examples. You don't need anybody else to tell you how to have a better relationship with your spouse than the Prophet's tradition itself. Yeah. Yeah. You have to say it. There's nothing wrong. I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong. There's no ego there. There's nothing there. Be simple. Life is simple. Take it simple. You know, this is a KISS policy. KISS is a keep it simple, stupid. So life, this is the approach you take. Keep it simple. Don't need to complicate anything. Don't need to expect, I'm coming into the house, why my wife will not give me a cup of water? You know, the problem, even books written by sex therapists, they have written clearly there, problem with a relationship today is that there is an expectation where you don't express it. You understand? Whatever you desire, you need to let your spouse know. If you don't know, she can't read your mind. You No, you have to let her know. Even you lived with a woman for 30 years, she's not going to read your mind. You can't make assumptions. I told you assumptions are mother of all mess ups. So if you want something, make it clear to her. Tell her, honey, when I come home from work, please get me a glass of water. Right? Say it. Don't just come there expecting you sitting and you're looking at your wife, she's speaking on iPhone, like, I'm so tired, I'm making hard living for the family. Look at her. Come on, that's not fair. That's not fair. Alright? So make sure shaitan don't come in between, because there is one shaitan that the head of shaitan is always impressed with. He's the one who goes between husband and wife and separates them. And any shaitan goes and reports to the head of shaitan that today I have separated one husband and wife. He is called to sit next to him and say, okay, you've done a good job. So don't let shaitan come in between you, right? She is someone's daughter. If you don't like her, let her go. Let her live her life. Not to disturb her, not to interrupt. If you're not happy with her, if you think living with her in the same roof is difficult, Islam has given you the permission to let her go. No need to say things about her after she goes. Don't just say anything. People ask, Allah, things didn't work out, so Alhamdulillah, let her go back. I pray to Allah that she gets someone better than me. You make this dua. One of the signs, the scholars tell us, you want dua to be accepted by Allah. The secret is you make dua for somebody else with what you want. For example, I say, Ya Allah, give these brothers a lot of goodness. There is an angel appointed. The angel will say, Ameen, Ya Allah. The same goes to this man. So the scholars tell us, you want Allah to accept your dua, then you make the same dua for others, then there's an angel making dua for you. And the chances of Allah accepting it is very high than just raising your hands and asking just for you everything. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Inshallah. MashaAllah. So brothers, a reminder for myself and you guys that biryani that you've been served for that many years are gifts, not an obligation, right? So I'll open up the floor for questions.